So we've seen how we can use VBA functions, pull out and return various values and manipulate strings, etc. And there are hundreds of these VBA built-in functions, some of which we will come across as we carry on through the title, some of which you will come across in your normal working day when you're working on Excel and suddenly decide you need to do something. Finding out about those functions is probably easiest done through either the VBA help, F1, when you're in the VBA editor, or going straight to the internet and doing a search for what you're trying to achieve within the VBA. Now let's have a look at actually calling some of the worksheet functions, because sometimes what you're trying to achieve might not be able to be done using a VBA function, but you know there is an Excel function that will do the job for you. So let's take the Excel functions file that's in your working folder. You'll see it has an example of some data, Monday to Friday, banana, apple and oranges, and some numbers. Now, if we wanted to add up the result of, say, for example, Thursday, so that's E2 to E4, and use that value programmatically to perhaps determine something else, we don't want to add it up and display it on the screen. We want to add it up and then do something with it. Then we're going to be able to need to add up ranges within the VBA. In order to do that, we can call upon the Excel sum function. So let's go have a look in the Visual Basic. We already have a little skeleton of a procedure waiting for you called sub Excel func. And what we would like to be able to do is, at the moment, output to a message box the result of that sum. So let's declare an answer to hold it. So it's going to be sum total as double, because it might contain decimal places. And then total is going to be equal to. So now we need to tell it to run an Excel function on those cells. Well, in order to tell it to run an Excel function, we need to call up the application object dot worksheet function. And you can see there that's a property. So we can tab to select that and then dot. And then we get a list of all the Excel functions that we can call on. So we only need to type the one we're after, which is sum. We then open brackets and we can use our little friend, the range object, to tell it which cells we would like to sum up, which is going to be sum F2, F5. Close speech marks, close round brackets for the range function, close round brackets for the sum function that we're calling upon. And then let's see if we do message box total, that it can actually achieve the adding up and give us our answer. So we run our procedure and the result is 80. So that was F2 to F5. Just checking the range. F2 to F5 is actually Friday. And it adds up to 80, 5, 79, 10, 6, 70. It's 80. It's correct. So that's calling on the worksheet function sum. And this could actually be any of the Excel functions you know and love. What about average? The average is 26.66666. What about min? For the smallest number in the range. Turn 3, and I can see 3 is the smallest number in the range. Let's do our little friend max. We might as well have the whole little family there. Max is 62, so that's the largest number in the range. So that's calling on a worksheet function. The way to call it does seem a little long-winded. Well, in fact, we just comment that line out. You can actually get away with a shorter syntax by dropping the application object and going straight in with worksheet function dot. Let's go back to sum, and don't forget we then have to tell it which range to pick up. Well, let's move to the left a little and go for E and close all the brackets. So now total is using a shorter syntax to do the same thing. I'm trying to run an Excel worksheet function called sum, so that's going to add up on this range of cells. Return is 78. And 60, 70, and 1 is 78. So it's a lot shorter. We don't actually need to put in the application object to call in the worksheet function. In fact, you can get away with even less than that. So let's comment that line out and let's say total equals. If this time we put in application object, then do dot sum, we can effectively miss out the worksheet function property. Range, and we'll use the same range so you can see the result is the same. And not enough number of brackets. I've got a range twice. Dot sum, open brackets, range, open brackets, close the range, close the sum. And then run the Excel func. 78 is the correct result. Now, personally, I prefer method 2, this one here. where we're still declaring the worksheet function. That way, if you see the code and you're scanning through, you can see where you're calling upon a worksheet function. This one is not so obvious that the sum is a worksheet function. Could be a built-in VBA function for all anyone knows who's looking at it. My personal preference is this choice. You could be a syntax king and use the total full name convention, application.worksheet function dot whatever the function is, open brackets, use the range function to then pick the cell that you're going to work with. Now you can call upon any of the worksheet functions this way, so any of the Excel functions that you're quite happily using, as long as you get the right set of parameters. Obviously min, max, sum, count, etc. are mathematical formulas and only require a range to work on. Some of the others, perhaps like VLOOKUP for example, require more parameters, so we'll take a little bit more building to get things in the right place. Let's just have a quick look at a VLOOKUP just to show the difference here. So we'll do sum VLOOK, create a little subroutine. Now obviously we're going to need some data to look up in, so let's go back to Excel, create a little mini lookup table. Let's just create the days of the week. It's Sunday. And that's going to be our lookup table. So I'm actually going to give it a name. We know we can use named ranges in our VBA. Call it weeks. And then we can go back to our Visual Basic. Building everything as variables, we're going to need a variable to hold the lookup. So that's dim num lookup as integer. We're going to need something to hold the result in. So that's actually the day of the week. So let's do dim weekday name as string. And then we can work out the weekday name. The weekday name is going to be equal to worksheet function dot VLOOKUP. And then you need to know the VLOOKUP formula to be able to do this. But the first lookup argument is the value we're going to look up. So that's num lookup. So whatever that numeric value is. Then the table, well, that's encompassed in the range, open brackets, weeks. And then the column number we wish to bring back, well, that's the second column. And then false, so it's got to be an exact match. The only value we haven't set is the num lookup. So let's say num lookup equals 3. And then we can output our weekday name to see if it works. So VLOOK. We get Wednesday because 3 is Wednesday. Let's try 7. 7 is Sunday. So you can see even with the more complicated Excel worksheet functions, we can still manipulate and use them in our VBA code, which can be quite useful when you start building your little programs.